Good evening, and this is your Sensei Al Bob, and welcome to our show, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. Here it is Thursday, March 20th, and things seem to be the eyes of March. Today, I've run into everyone who's just kind of crabby. Nothing's right, everything's wrong, someone else is to blame. Our discussion earlier today was on the similar topic of that, we all seem to be, as Dickens put it, all going, to heaven, all going the other way. It was the time of great potential. It was the time of great sorrow. It was the time when we could come together. It was the time when we could be at our throats. It was the window of opportunity that could be slammed at any minute. Now I'm just kind of, it's not what Dickens said in The Tale of Two Cities. I'm just paraphrasing. And I'm wondering how you all, the cadre, have experienced today, Earlier in the day, I saw the potential where people could break through, finally, and stand up to who they were, right? And not just continue. And day is as most days are pretty good because I'm, the griot, the observer, the storyteller, right? And yes, people can, as one of my clients once put it, that I was a taste that it took some getting used to. So yes, a lot of people can be off-put by who and what I am and how I comport my business. But most people are upset with me with the truth that I tell in my stories, They don't want to, the griot tells you a story that you may not understand, but it gets in your head and it rattles around in there and it kind of loosens up the dust and the rust. And you start to see things that you knew were there, but you used, the excuse to not have to face, The thing that is always, and we all do that. Even I, can use the excuse, And so, but I'm, again, with that window of opportunity, people get a little twitchy because, not twitchy like you twitchy, but twitchy like nervous, in that they would rather live with the suffering they know than the opportunity to be who they really are, to really be happy, to really, open up, So, but do you know what I'm talking about, Twitchy? How people can often rather suffer than make the effort to break through their problems, And the best way that I find, and I can only speak from my experience, is that I have problems like everyone else, and I have issues like everyone else, but I try to face them when I first see them, when I first know them, when I can go, oh, what's that? How can I deal with that? Without having to be put in a place where I have to find a scapegoat, right? Look at the other. I mean, why do we have such issues with the duality? Because we always are looking for the other to be the scapegoat. Every time, our whole history in America is, what makes America great is the diversity. That, I mean, most countries like China, China is this emerging power. But the elephant in their living room is that they're made up of close to 70 different cultural groups, right? Who have been at each other's throats for thousands of years. They have not been able to, put together a way to live together. And the only way they can do it is materialism, outside enemies. That's why they built their wall. Didn't seem to help them very much. And war within, one group against the other. Now, the power structure in the United States has done a similar thing, divide and conquer. Races, genders, religious groups, and nationalities. And the Mexicans and Muslims aren't the first, the Irish, the Italians, the Germans, the Polish, the Jewish, at the height of when empathy for the Jewish people should have been in America. Father Coughlin and Senator Bilbo passed a law that said zero immigration of Jews into the United States. Not a limited number, but zero. And they were being put in camps and exterminated. And we knew this. We understood it. But we did, we put an immigration law where they couldn't. And that's why that book of the boat that tried to escape Germany and went to because not only did we put a zero immigration, we put in that law that if any other country, Canada, the Caribbean, people in Central and South America let Jews into their country, we would stop trading with them. We would put them on a list where they were the enemy, And that's why so many died in, in Europe. And it wasn't just the Jews, it was the gypsies, it was everybody who didn't go along. And there was a great Methodist bishop who said, when the Nazis came for the homosexuals, I didn't know any, so I didn't stand up. When the Nazis came for the gypsies, I didn't know any, so I didn't stand up. When the Nazis came for the socialists, I didn't know any, so I didn't stand up. When the Nazis came for the communists, I didn't stand up. When the Nazis came for the Jews, I didn't know any, so I didn't stand up. And when the Nazis came for me, there was no one left to stand up for me. As Ben Franklin said, if we don't hang together, we're all going to hang separately. And so I was talking to a friend today, and I was saying that, like Dickens said, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. We're all going to heaven, we're all going the other way. It was the time of incredulity, it was the time of understanding. So that's where we're at. And we have this great opportunity. I mean, Donald Trump is a great blessing because he's putting right in front of our face the incongruity of our political system. Donald Trump isn't the only, really terrible person. Every legislator, we have the best legislators money can buy. They legislate so they can do insider trading, and it's not against the law. But you and I do it, we'd go to jail. They can, all of these people, all those Democrats running for president, all the money they collect, they can keep. And this guy, the guy from Texas who almost, you know, deposed Cruz. Did you read you know, the article about him in Vanity Fair? It was unbelievable. The quotes when I said I was going to run for president, it was like I was there and I didn't know what I was saying, and the words just came out of my mouth, and I was watching it, and I couldn't believe. It was like if those came out of Donald Trump's mouth, we would try to put him in a straitjacket. But this guy, he's young and handsome, and it's like he has no experience whatsoever. At least Donald Trump was had 40 years of running an empire. And he thought, what I really think is he still thinks he's on the set on The Apprentice. Disassociation, exactly. We are disassociating ourselves from what's going on around us, right? And we let, non-essential fear, that things that don't mean anything, occupy our mind, So, I mean, what's the worst if you set forth the values of love's co-creation as what you set your compass to, your North Star, it's what can go wrong? At the very worst, they'll kill you. So what? That's all right. Because if you lead a life of grace and gratitude, and follow the North Star of love's co-creation, you can't navigate incorrectly. When you try to go in a direction that all you can think about is yourself. Oh, it's so difficult. I can't do it. Ooh, oh, they're all jealous. Ooh, oh, it's all about, accusations. I was telling someone today that whenever you accuse someone of something, you basically are pointing the finger at yourself. The best you can do with your life is to try to help others by leading a good example. And when you can physically, if you get involved, if you can do positive, outcomes, then it's worth getting involved, So here we are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland, your TV funhouse theater, right? This show is here 100% for entertainment's sake, And if you get, as I tell you stories as your griot, they will get into your little cage up in your Rolodex, and as the squirrel runs around in there, it will, knock some of the dust off the pipes and take some of the crust off of the surface. And you might, that's the best, we're here to entertain and give some insight. But, this is not a religious moment. This is not we're not a cult, There is no following. There is no, all I am is the griot. All I am is telling you a story for entertainment's sake, right? And I hope that you enjoy it tonight. So what did you guys think about last night's little viewing? So have any of you, what I'd love to hear from you guys, and especially if more show up, is your experiences with the paranormal, the things that go bump in the night. What's been your experience, And, if you want to have those experiences, If you want to have those experiences, all you have to do is go in state and, look in your Akashic record, and you can see everything in history. Right? You can see that we, Homo sapien, were manufactured, you know, by extraterrestrial and dimensional characters. You know, we were put on this earth. When you're looking for aliens, all you got to have to do is look in a mirror. You know, there's I think it's on the Cartoon Network, but there's this thing called Adult Swim. That's kind of after midnight, and it's animated. It's anime, and it's a lot of stuff, and it's adult, subject matter. And they have this one great little show. I don't even know what it's called. Maybe some of you do. Where the alien comes down to prehistoric Earth. It grabs a monkey, grabs some of the DNA, and creates Homo sapien sapien, right? Or first Cro-Magnon, right? And then Homo sapien sapien. And of the four, the smartest one is the cheeky little monkey, the one who is the original. He's not the copy. He's not the clone. He's not the genetically Kamara, and he's not, the bug boy in the flying saucer. And the cheeky little monkey is constantly playing all three of those clowns as fools. And that's exactly what we all are, fools. Even Lucifer is a fool. This whole illusion is a fool's errand, but it's done for a reason. We're here in this sandbox to learn, And one of the major things, to be, our life isn't here to, it's not the fun house. You can have fun, but it's not the fun house, And it's not the scary house either, Even though fear seems to be the number one motivator of the human race, and, fun, drugs, food, sex, money, possessions, these are all addictions. And they're not even fun. What is fun? At least for me. Again, your Sensei Al Bob can only speak for himself. What I enjoy most is when I see other people happy. What I enjoy most is when I try to help and it works out, and it does help, What I enjoy most is to sit quietly in the forest and watch nature talk to me. What I enjoy most is reading a great piece of literature, poetry, novel, essay. When it touches me, when it makes me think, when it opens my heart, that's, what I enjoy, When I create, when I write something, when I paint something, when I work and create something. Why did I work 50 years as an electrician? To pay my bills? No. I enjoyed doing it. Why did I work 10 years for the desperate lawyers? Yes, probably was the best amount of payment I ever got, in a continued form. But I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed the challenge of negotiating, getting folks to come together to do something that would be the best for everybody, right? Now, in a corporate sense, that's like almost an oxymoron, but that's why I did it, And it gave me a certain level of freedom. Now, if I have, I talk about people who drop their anchor and do the same thing over and over and over again in a, habitual kind of way. And one of my, the one anchor, if I see I have one, there's two I have. One is, I drive like a New Yorker, right? And so it's one of my greatest, lessons to have to be patient behind the wheel. And, I'm getting better at it, What can I say, And because, I hardly have any cash, I can't, spend it on, erroneous automobile incidents, And so I drive more, I've been trained as a fireman and I took the, defensive driving course to drive a fire truck. So I know what to do, keep 5, 10 lengths between me and the next car. But when you drive that way and then 5 cars zoom in front of you and then you're on the bumper of the fifth car, I mean, things like that, being try to let people go and get into the flow of traffic and then, people cut you off and scream and yell, for being, these are it takes, but it's again, a lesson that I need to learn about patience, and it's a good thing, as long as no one dies, and that's what I had a great teacher who said, as long as no one dies and there's no real problem, who cares, right? So that's the bottom line of this storyline, as long as no one dies, it's okay, So, let's see, what else can we say here? What do you guys say? Not even in your dreams, Twitchy? You've never had any nightmares, because our dream time is it's as real as anything else, So what art are you working on, Twitch? What are you creating these days? I mean, my dreams are always crazy, right? So there's the paranormal for you. Either do I. Again, like you said, crazy dreams, yes. But even things that some people might consider scary, because I think I told you the story of my grandma showing me what fear is. She took me to a movie. She sat me in the front row, and I looked straight up at the monster. I could see it was like a phony piece of baloney. Back in the middle of the theater, looking at the screen. Ooh, that looks scary. But right up, you could see the scratchiness and the this and the that. And that's, everything is, computer graphics, pretty much. Oh, that sounds fun. So you made the skeleton rats like human beings. Oh, I like that. That sounds very interesting. Now, if you could use that in stop, have you ever played around with stop action animation, Twitch? Those rats sound like something. During the 80s, I used to do a lot of, in late 70s, middle 70s, middle 80s, I played around with stop action animation with my Super 8 camera. And I had one of the best films I made was, so I would fix, these rich people would buy a building that had been a factory, and then they'd want it cleaned out, and then, new services put in, and if the floors were big enough, you slice them up into 1,000-foot or 2,000-foot lofts, and then so you'd have hallways and individual things. But anyway, so I would do that, and I would get paid really well, and in the process of doing that, I would have a place to stay for 6 months to a year for free. I would find the space in that building that was the quickest, easiest to turn into a comfortable space for me to live in while I fixed up the building. I did that about 4 or 5 times. So about, 4 or 5, 6, 7 years over a, 12-year period. That was how I lived. I didn't pay any rent, had a really nice address and a nice building and a nice loft, and then I would make a nice living because I would be the guy who the guy who owned a building would sell each of these lofts to, and I'd be right there, and I'd put in, the electrics, the plumbing, the water, the this, the that. And so I would then be their contractor for what they wanted to do with their blank slate. And so I did that for a number of years. And that was usually one of my gigs coming back into New York, when I'd be living someplace else. And because usually when I finished that project, I would get a nice little, bag of money, and I would go on from there. And and so one time we cleaned out a building that had amazing stuff in it. Had one loft had this guy. It was 8 floors, and each person who had one of these floors, and each floor was maybe about 5,000 square feet, had rented it from the guy who owned the building for like a 30-year period, And back in 1920, whatever it was, when they got the 30-year period, they gave them, I don't know, 10 grand for 30 years or whatever they gave them. But it was, as the years went on, the cost, anyway, long story short, that most people just left their stuff there, you know. And so years went by, and so then somebody would buy the building and want to do develop it into law for the yuppies and the lawyers. Anyway, so this one building that we did this to had one floor, had all these amazing art supplies. I mean, paper, like just tons of paper, really beautiful paper, and decoupage chalks, and really nice oil paints, and just a ton of unbelievable art supplies. That they were, the guy who said, "Oh, just throw them in a dumpster." Not me. I had all these artist friends who I said, "Hey, come and help me clean this stuff out." And that's when Basquiat, or Samo, was my helper, and he got a good chunk of that. And we, moved up into the loft that we were staying at, and he kind of, went nuts with that stuff. Another floor was this guy had, you know, 5,000 square feet of plastic um, jewelry, real kind of 1920s Art Deco jewelry. And man, I made, me and the plumber and a few of the other guys who worked on this project, we split it because we were all artists. And so we kind of split it up and we turned it into art, and but I had a couple of friends, not, my other Olga friend who had Big Apple Auction. I got her in there and she sold that off. And we, that stuff sold, we sold a chunk of that stuff to Cartier and to Tiffany's, and we got a nice chunk. So anyway, one of the floors was in a loft that I moved into Brooklyn, had been a sweater factory, right? And it had about 10,000 square feet of boxes and boxes and boxes of sleeves for these synthetic, not the body, but just the sleeves. And they had lots of these boxes were full of plastic boxes with just the sleeves, right? So I took them down to Juilliard and all the dancers, right? I think I was the guy who popularized the legging things, because I sold these these sleeves to the dancers who pulled them on their legs to keep them warm. And then my friend who had um, Canal jeans, she bought them all from me and a whole bunch of other stuff. And she became, Canal jeans became Banana Republic. And because she would buy clothes like that and turn it into other stuff and sell it to folks. Anyway, so part of those sleeves were not boxed up, but were like, the machine just turned out like a 500-mile long tube of a sleeve, right? Synthetic. And so I took these pieces of plywood and cut out forms of human beings, tall ones, like 8 foot tall. This was 4 by 8 pieces of plywood. And I cut them out, and I could get 2 or 3 people out of each sheet. and these were really funky sheets of plywood in this building, and we just kind of I used my coping saw and then I wrapped them up in these you know sleeves, 40, 50 feet, and just kind of wrapped it around so the whole thing was covered. The plywood creature was covered in these. Its skin was the wrapping of the synthetic sweater sleeves. And then I was working on a building down on Pearl Street, and I had a floor that I was hanging out in as I fixed up the building, and I was using that as my art studio down in Wall Street. And Pearl Street runs right into Wall Street. And during those times, that was middle 70s, before it was 74, 5. And so, right? And then I set these creatures up on these like little tripods, and I had my friends. And so what was amazing about Wall Street was like there'd be no one there, 5 in the morning, no one there, 6 in the morning, no one there, 7 in the morning, no one there. 7:30, people would explode out of the subways. And from 7:30 until 9:30, the place would just be like an ant farm, right? So I did a stop frame animation where the people were moving, exploding out. I caught them exploding out of the um, you know subway exits, and I moved the plywood covered creatures, bit by bit, animate, 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 animate. So I'd have them walk into the Chase Manhattan Bank, right? And we simulated. I knew the guy who was the manager there. Was my bank. And I said, I just want to do this little kind of animation. And this is like the 70s. No one cared. So, I had them come in and they just saw us moving the creatures, and it was a silent film. And, it was a bank robbery. And the plywood creature would, and then walked out. And, it was like about a 10-minute kind of film. And that's what it was. And that was, my favorite animation of all the little kind of animations I did. And actually, I showed that at a couple of shows and got some, it was funny, it was cute, it was all the above. But that's what you can do with stuff that people think is garbage, And for virtually, in that 10-year period that I was, an artist, I was making art, I was, showing it in galleries. I had my own gallery, the Six Sense Gallery, No Say No Gallery. Um, and I was in lots of shows, right? And I, a couple of times, was in the Whitney Annual and at the Whitney White Columns, right? So, because I would, be a curator of one of these shows, so I put one of my stuff in there. Hey there, fish. And so, oh, so Graham, what's Dublin up to these days? The thing about Ireland was this almost monolith of a social structure. And then with the Maastricht Treaty of 1988, and they joined the EU, it was like someone stuck a rocket in their butt and, they shot into Moneyland. And I went there in 2005 and was right on that edge. I mean, everything had become like unbelievable. The real estate, you could, when I was there in 80, well, it's, yeah, 81 and 88, you could buy a farm for 50 grand, out there in one of the counties in the rural sections. And, I went through a little town that I kind of used to live in, a place called Glendore. And the a buddy of mine who had the pub and the little, B&B hotel, he sold it for 6 million euros. I was like, what? His building built like in the 17th century. And, some Europeans bought it, and he was going to go, someplace in Spain. And right at right when I was there in 2005, it was at the height of that kind of materialism. But, it's in like I when I went into Dublin and they totally took down the oak trees in O'Connell Street, and it turned that unbelievable, took down all the statues of all the heroes and made that O'Connell Street look like, something in Brussels. I said, wow, there's something wrong here. And that you couldn't smoke in any of the bars in Dublin. And you had to show I had a white beard, and I showed my ID to show that I could get a drink. I mean, when I first went to Trinity, and, when was that? 70. Um, if you could get your fingernails up to the top of the bar, they'd stick a cigarette in your mouth and give you a glass of Patty's Irish whiskey. It's like, anyway. Um, and it was so different. But I kind of felt, I talked to a lot of people I had known there, and they all said, boy, this is going too far. Anyway, so, oh, so what's Dublin like these days? Because when things swing so far that way, they swing back the other way. And that's what's happening to America. Things have swung so far. See, if you look at history in America, what's going on here now, it's not like it hasn't happened before. This is about the eighth time we've had this kind of demonized, separate, tribal. We had a civil war. And every time this happens, it's not because the people caused it. It's because an outside force manifests this to their own little reason. The reason why we had the Civil War had nothing to do with the South and the North and slavery. No, France and England wanted to take back America. And the country that stepped in, France and England backed the South. And the Russians came to the aid of Lincoln, gave him like 60 million in gold and put their navy on our east coast so we couldn't be blockaded. The French and the English were blockading the east coast of the north. So, I mean, that's not something they tell you in history books, in American history books anyway. And go read Howard Zinn, he'll tell you, or go watch the movie Gangs of New York, because that last scene is where the U.S. Northern Navy, the Navy of Lincoln, shelled, they were Protestant, and they shelled New York City, Manhattan, because the Irish draft rebellion was going on and they couldn't put it down. They sent in the police. Well, they were all Irish, so they went on the side of the rebellion, and then they sent in the militia. And the militia was Irish, and so they went on the side of the rebellion. Now they had rifles. They didn't have any cannon, but they had rifles. So the army couldn't just march in there. It would have been bloodbath. So what did they do? The Navy at night shelled New York City, Manhattan, and killed 250,000 people. The first industrialized genocide. And they surely don't tell you that story. And that's why all the churches, the Protestant and the Catholics, got to own a third of the real estate in Manhattan. That's why you go up to Harlem and on the west side where Columbia was, there were all these, Protestant, Methodist, Lutheran, theologic universities. They own tons of real estate, more than Donald Trump. Anyway, and that would make a good, horror show. So go watch that movie. Go read Howard Zinn's American History. Anyway, what's up, y'all? What's up with you, Fish? Graham, what's up with you, baby? I have dinner on the iron, and I put it on low, but I try not to eat past 7, 8 o'clock. Just woke up. Okay. Did you have any interesting dreams? Anyway, so this might be a short one. Start going back into. I'm pushing 500 of these shows. I started May 8th of 2018, right? May 8th, which is right now it's March, and then it'll be April, and then May. So in about 2 months, I will be 1 year of doing this, right? And I've got about 260 of you cadre, and it's kind of bubbling around there. It doesn't go up any higher. I get a few, I lose a few, but I got close to 32, 3,000 views. Meaning a lot of people watching this, but they're not wanting to be the cadre, the chorus. There's an average of 9 to 20 who kind of come into the chat. Not all of you chat, but you're there. So there's usually somewhere between 9 and 20 of you on the chat, and maybe 3 to 4 of you go into the the guided meditations. So how many of you 3 there are going into state, practicing meditation, breathing in that 20% and breathing out that 30? How many are doing that? Anyway, I'd like some feedback. You can get a hold of me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail, right? And why don't you go give a good read at xratted.blogspot.com. And any one of you who wants to assist me to build the edifice of the Humanities Artist Trust International, I could use some help. Really, I have no idea what I'm doing. It may look like I do, but I really, at some point, I'd really like this to be a team effort. It kind of is, when we do the shows, you do show up and you do kind of chat, and you do contact me at the Dude Awake 42, and we have nice conversations. But I really kind of want to. I have no idea anything about social media. That's why I do live chats. I had no idea how to edit or do it or make it. The best I can do is hit the special effect button down there and make it disco or dreamy time or whatever. And so, I'd really like to see an evolution of this show, right? And now, like I said, I'm pushing almost 500 shows. There's some people who've been on YouTube for 6 years and they got 3 they call them videos. I call them shows up. I'm not supposed to call this hey YouTubers. No, that's why I coined the phrase cadre. So you're my cadre. You're my cadre adepts. You're learning. You want to expand yourself, and at some point, excellent 500. Yes, it's blowing my mind, but I can't see that once a month. YouTube basically tells me my numbers. I haven't even figured out how to look at them. I can go on to my channel and go over there about info, and it tells I can see how many people are the cadre and how many people view. But I can't even pull up how many videos I've done until once a month YouTube sends me a Gmail saying, "Hey, look at this." And one of the things they keep, you know, saying, "Hey, you're doing pretty good," is that my YouTubes, my shows are pretty long. Right now here we are at 46 minutes and 53 seconds, but my average time is almost 3 hours. Right? Some are about four, some are about 2.5, but average is about 3 hours each of these, right? Give or take. And the interesting thing is that the folks who watch them in their entirety. Most people's YouTubes, people watch for about 30 seconds and go on. They do. But you guys kind of watch it for a pretty extended time, and so I'm probably 1 millionth most fabulous channel on YouTube, but I'm in the top 10,000 of hours watched. And YouTube says, "Hey, that's pretty cool. That's something we can monetize. Come on, just get above 1,000 subscribers, and we'll be able to put you on the gravy train." Now, I'm not that interested in the gravy train. It'd be nice because I'm having difficulties with financing. I had a bunch of unknown bills. I wanted to prepare the deep green, so I had to go and pay my taxes and get the electric thing and put a few Dreckle into a bank account. And because I have such bad, if I lose my bank accounts, I'll never be able to open another one. And anyway, so I have like issues like that, and every so often, I have a month where I basically live on $3, you know, you know, um, for 2 or 3 weeks, and that's kind of where I'm at now. What was that? Do I feel what? Do you feel England owes Ireland reparations for potato famine and the Cogents being outed in Nova Scotia? Well, I don't know how you're going to do that, but in a karmic way, sure, yeah. Just like white folk owe reparations to the native 6 million Native indigenous people that we murdered. Uh, just like we owe the Africans, the you know 10 or 12 million Africans that we kidnapped, murdered, raped, pillaged, right? And North Africa, everybody owes a lot of everybody. It kind of breaks down. If you had to put who really should pay reparations, it should be the Holy Roman Empire. Those guys, because they ended up being England, you know. And if you really want to take it, you have to go to the ownership class, the insectoids that manufactured us. You know, I mean, the bottom line is if you try to go that way, no, because what you really have to do, it's like the whole question of disclosure. Right now, the hidden hand, the powers that shouldn't be, the sock puppets, they have control of technology 1,000 years ahead of where we are. They have time travel. They can cure every disease known to humanity. They can increase the longevity of the human race by about 80 years, and you'd be living close to 210 years in good health and free energy, point-to-point transportation, you know, um, everything that Gene Roddenberry put into Star Trek, the replicator, you know, you know, warp drive, all of that stuff we have, and that's why he made that show. Look, the little communicator is the flip phone. All of that stuff was already invented, already being used. We can easily just plug. I mean, people keep figuring out how to tap the the what do you call the word escapes me at the moment. Anyway, free energy, 0 point energy, and they call it the vacuum, right? And every time there's about 40 people in the last 100 years, have, or even last, from 1790 on, more than 100 individuals discovered free energy, gravel magnetic propulsion, and eternal life, right? And replicating things out of energy. Yeah, 0 point is quantum. How potato. So now, if you really want to talk about reparations, it's the hidden hand, the powers that shouldn't be, and the sock puppets. But they're going to kill humanity because they're scared what we're going to do to them because there's just a handful of morons. That's why they killed Kennedy. That's why they killed, everybody. Everyone who, hey, look at this. Bang, And if you were to just go 0 point energy on YouTube or, you know, Google, all of this would come up. That's the beauty of social media, of YouTube and Google, is that this information is everywhere. So these morons, the hidden hand and you know the powers that shouldn't be, and yes, but poor Donnie. DT is a moron. He's a chump. It's Donnie Chump. That's why my character on Johnny's channel, it's Donnie Chump because he's being used. Somebody has rewired that poor boy's brain. If you look at his, he's part of the worker bee clan. Not even the managerial. He's got no money. And he got put in there because he's such a chump. What's going to happen to Donnie? This is what I'm telling you, one of the potentials that could happen. I'm saying there's 60% chance this is what's going to happen. Donnie is going to be indicted in the next 6 months, right? Before, February of 2020. All that, his son, Ivanka, Jarrett, they're all going to jail. And everybody around him is going to go to jail. And they're all going to sing like a bird, right? He's going to try and give them a presidential and he's going to be indicted. He won't be brought to, court because he can't. He's president, right? And so he is going to, put a wedge and the powers that shouldn't be will make him president. He will be president for another, 4 years, another 5 years, including 2020. And in that time, that's when we're going to be invaded by extraterrestrials. But, the extraterrestrials are already here. The extraterrestrials that are going to invade are going to be holographic Hollywood characters. And that's why you need to watch Steven Spielberg's, War of the Worlds that he did in the 90s or so. And half of that movie is done on a sound stage, which is the metaphor of, hey, kids, when these guys come down and you really think it's happening, just like you really thought that Saddam, bin Laden, blew up the World Trade Centers when it was really Mossad and the hidden hand and the powers that shouldn't be, because Mossad is not the Hebrew people, it is the Zionist folk, right? The Kanaje Mafia, go look at those guys, right? Khazarian Mafia, who became the Anunnaki, who became the Zionists. They are um, the white race the Nazis were looking for, right? I mean, go look at the history. Dig a little deeper than the comic book that is shown to you in your high school history class. The real history is there. It's really not hard to find. Yeah. Now sorry, gang, time travel was perfected by Homo sapiens sapien in the 1790s. Go look at, the Gilded Age. Go look at the mud flood. Go look at the technology. They had free energy then. The rich folk, because Edison wasn't even born yet, so the rich folk had electricity. They had electric lights. They had heating. They had you go into those architectural homes of the Gilded Age, and they have, fireplaces that don't have chimneys, and they have a metal backing with another metal plate. And it was a 0 point device that took the energy and used it as a tap to create heat. The current flow created heat right then and there. You know, and to make that kind of current tap, our generators that are in dams and in coal-fired power plants and in oil-fired power plants and nuclear power plants, all of those things make steam that runs a turbine. The turbine runs a magnet around a coil of wire. And, and where the current flow comes from is not the EMF, but it comes from the magnetic torsion field, which is the tap. That's like, tap, like turning the faucet on. That's the tap. And they had to create, put the current in a way so, the energy in, you're only getting 30%, by just having the magnet as the tap. You don't have to have any boiler or burning anything. It's interesting, just as I'm explaining this, you disrupt the field, which is called a tap, and then you just open up the valve and take off unlimited amount of current without any loss, of entropy. Now they say, oh, entropy, that's a basic law of physics. No, they had to invent it so they could sell you coal, oil, and nuclear power. Sorry, I mean, that's what Tesla's Warden Cliffs facility was. It was the tap, a planetary tap. He made that thing, he put it on a certain frequency so you could have a box anywhere in the freaking planet tuned to that. It was planetary resonance. And you could have unlimited power. You could have a little box about 40 pounds. You could drive a car forever. You could, drive your house forever. You could have unlimited electric current forever without a cost. But Mr. J.P. Morgan said, hey, we can't have that. How can we make money? Free electricity? No, you know what? There'd be no wars. So Mr. Rockefeller and Mr. Rothschild couldn't leverage money being lent to the governments to fight wars. Because, and with having unlimited current, you could then travel through time and space. With unlimited current, you could, because everything is made, your body, that cheeseburger you're eating, it's not matter, point, 0.0000005% is matter. The rest is empty space. And that cheeseburger is only existing because it's vibrating at a certain frequency. So, the replicator they have in Star Trek, what it does, it gets a certain frequency. You got, Earl Grey tea, hot, cheeseburger, milkshake, whatever you want. So you can have unlimited anything you wanted, clothes, cars. It's like a 3D printer. You could 3D print. The extraterrestrial folk, their craft, they think into existence because they're harmonic. They're not crass creatures like us. They're not mud puppets like we are. They basically are. Their harmonic is way up there, right? So they just have to think what they want, and bingo, there it is. And that's why their spaceships are organic. That's why they think of it, and bingo, the spaceship's around them doing exactly what they want it to do. Yep. Whatever metaphor you want to use, Jane. But it's basically one man's magic is another man's science. And one man's science is another man's religion. What do you mean holes? Well, holy like religious hole? Yeah, their science is holy. Yeah, basically, Jane, realize the hidden hand, that rules this planet, this solar system, that's in a cabal with dimensional creatures and other entities from other solar systems. It's like Sears catalog. Weakness equals holes. Yes. Well, the weakness in the hidden hands business plan is that it's based on a freaking whole illusion. Because the only truth there is love's co-creation. Everything else is an illusion. That's why none of this crap matters. It's just a sandbox. Oh, lucky. And the only cohesive singularity is love's co-creation. Everything else is an illusion. It really is just an illusion. That's why light, that's why every time we go into state, we create the photonic light through breathing in the prana and expanding our lungs. So it takes that energy that gets turned into scalar energy, that frequency, which then, when surrounding every cell and the mitochondria, vibrates at that higher frequency, that scalar harmonic, creates photonic light. And photonic light we then bring it into our imaginary mirror where we can see things without shadows, where everything in this universe is a shadow universe, And what is the shadow universe but total chaos, That's what it's all about, the chaos theory, That's what the shadow universe is about. Now, the other construct is the fascist control, And if you're only, the only cohesive singularity is love's co-creation. Everything else, illusion, based on shadow and fascist control, which is an illusion itself, So that's kind of where we're at. So I would love it if you guys could go on your own without me having to do a guided meditation, 5 or 6 times a day, go into state, practice makes perfect, and it will enable you to see things clearer, through photonic light, no shadows. Good. Well, man, if you were working in Nebraska and Minnesota, you'd be thinking the mud flood is coming. Yep, deep silence and state. But totality of vision. And you can hear things, When we go into state, you hear my voice, I hear your chat. No, the silence you're hearing is the lack of the illusion, the lack of the chatter of the squirrel, the lack of the fingernails on the blackboard of chaos. That's the silence you're hearing. Stillness, okay. Yeah. And again, the stillness, again, is the lack of the illusion. There's still activity, there's still movement. Yep, slowing down the speed up. Yep, because that's part of the illusion, part of the chaos, and part of the fascist corporate state. So love is has none of that. None of the chaos, none of the illusion, none of the fascist state. It has photonic light that has no shadow, that you can see everything clearly and understand. Has your Akashic records that shows everything from the beginning to the end. So you get what is known as perspective, And love, is unconditional. Love has no expectation. Love is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the completion of who we are, and the connection of all our relations, where there is no other. It's all of us. So say we all. Okay, how are we doing? Again, I'm getting a little hungry, so I'm going to probably say goodnight. Now, you guys, you only know each other's emails and etc. And, I'd love to hear from everybody. Come on, drop me a little personal note. And everyone knows that I return the mail pretty quickly, as best I can. But I respond to everyone who drops me a line at, the dude awake 42 at Gmail. I'm there. And anybody who wants to send me a little helpful money order from Western Union, I would surely love it, because I'm like living on $3 for the next 4 weeks, Now, it's interesting and creative, and, and it is what it is. But so anybody want to send me that to, ADMARTINO at Roanoke, Virginia, and then, send me a Gmail of the control number to the dude awake 42 at Gmail. That'd be great. Or anybody wants to send me a nice little letter, a picture, a poem, Christmas card, whatever, that would be great too. I love you all. And, just keep on keeping on. We're doing great. We are that little pebble in the great pond that makes the tsunami of love. I'm going to say goodnight at 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 11 seconds. So it'll be ones across the board. And you guys are slowly leaving the chat. So anybody, what else you saying? Yep. So let the energies be right. Let the force be with you. That's for sure. And I love you all, and sweet dreams. I'm going to go eat some of those carrots I've sauteed with onions and squash. And we're getting close. It's 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 45 seconds. It's the countdown to ones across the board, hands across the nation. And so I'll see you tomorrow. I'll try and do a daytime chat. Yep, I shall have a good dinner, everyone, tomorrow. Here it is, 111, 07, 8, 9, 10, 11. Ones across the board. I love you guys. See you.